Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Crime Centric. This being a show we're talking about crime dramas that I watch. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Animal Kingdom. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Well, first and foremost, let's start off with everything present day. Obviously, Craig and Darren, that whole beef and issue continues to be an issue because Craig's suggesting, like, hey, let me go in there with you, but Darren's like, yeah. I mean, it makes sense why Darren would be reluctant to have Craig go in because Eddie's already seen your face, and and it's not under positive situation. It's under the circumstances of you tried to, like, trick him and you're checking out the place, so, like, Eddie would be on guard. So I get that mentality, but Craig takes it as Darren just being a dick and just trying to run things his own way. Later on, he even throws the whole situation last season using Ren as throwing that in his face. It's like, yeah, that's your so-called dickhead leadership, and look at you now, you're being selfish again. Because the jab goes down, for the most part, it went down successfully, except for the last piece. I'm assuming it's the most valuable of the pieces, but because of that, they missed out on, I don't know if the total would have been $100,000 or that by itself would have been $100,000. It's probably like everything in total. Either way, they missed out on a good chunk of money because Darren couldn't get the last piece. But it's like, right, I mean, if Craig was there, would it have made things better? I don't know. I thought that was just kind of an interesting, because once again, it's like we never really get the laid out plans a lot of times, but it is interesting just seeing it kind of enacted. Them stopping up them backing up the toilet, and just like that bathroom situation being the god awful disgusting situation it was. Like sneaking the fake jewels in, swapping them with the real jewels flushing them down the toilet, so it ends up at the drain where Pope and Jay are waiting. So I thought that was interesting. And Craig going above and beyond to act as the person to kind of distract things, getting in front of Home Dude's car. Home Dude, by the way, that guy, kind of the douchebag rich guy, was it Brock? It's played by, if I'm not mistaken, I think that's the actor who plays Rick on Stargirl, if I'm not mistaken. I'm fairly certain that was him. I was like, oh, that's interesting. But yeah, I mean, they got out of there. Now, I mean, granted, Craig had to punch one of the guards, also get hit by a car. But other than that, they kind of got away without too much of an issue. So the job worked out, except for that little snafu of they couldn't get one of the pieces they were trying to get. And that leads to a whole drag out fight between Craig and Darren. I love Craig being like, yo, step to me if you want to. And it's like, oh, I guess, who's the bitch now? Moment his back is turned, Craig comes in like a wrestler with the stool or whatever and bashes him, and they go at it, and Craig kind of comes out on top on this one. Because I was about to say, they duked it out last season. Everybody walked away pretty fucked up last season. Craig got, Darren got some licks in, but Craig really fucked Darren up. So, and I love it's Jay's almost looking like, should we interfere? But Pope's like, nah, let him work it out, So, I thought that was kind of fascinating in the long run. But, obviously their stuff hasn't really been finished yet. And to be fair, Pope's like, you guys have been fighting since you were 6 years old. It's kind of that's why he's not, it's like brothers fight. You two in particular fight like cats and dogs. Once again, I brought it up. This family literally had a knuckle draw, brawl last season alone. Things got nasty, bruises, bloody. I mean, kind of always does when it comes to the Codys. It always ends up in some roughhousing type of shit. It's one of those stereotypes of, oh, boys will be boys type of shit, But it reigns so true with the Codys, so. But it's Darren's got a lot of his own issues, and Craig's got his issues too, and they're just kind of butting heads. It's there's so much internalizing that they're kind of both going through and dealing with that they're kind of lashing out at each other just because, I don't know, Darren... Everything Craig's doing right now is rubbing Darren the wrong way, because for Darren, it's almost like you're trying to paint me as a bad guy, I'm the blame for all the shit that's wrong in your life. It's yeah, kind of take some responsibility. It's not my fault you can't handle your liquor and your drugs, that you're the one that's spiraling out of control, that you're trying to be sober. Because for him, he feels like he's losing his brother a little bit. But then Craig's like, no, you're just trying to keep me down, and he's taking Vince's advice about right, you don't need to just work with your family, separating just because you'll have to stay in business with your family, because Craig is the one that's the most on the outs, because Jay and Darren closed the deal with the bar, because now this is heading towards them trying to legitimize things. It's like, right, with the guys who were buying Son of a Beach, by like getting like a 6%, a 5% thing from them, cut from them. They're kind of like bringing in legitimate money, and eventually it's like, we won't be immediate, but Jay's saying like, yeah, eventually we can like do what we're doing, but also have legitimate money. Because I don't know if the plan is to always like eventually stop doing what they're doing. The way Jay talked about it, he almost made it sound like, no, we'd keep doing what we're doing, but a lot of our money would be okay. We probably wouldn't have to take as many jobs. To probably like, oh, we'd take some jobs, big time jobs if something comes about, but other than that, we'd be okay, because we'd have a steady, like, legit source of revenue going through, and we wouldn't ever have to worry about anyone ever like questioning that. And because I even love Andrew Mix's point of like, right, organisms. He's like, organisms, if they don't adapt, they die. I mean, look at the Amazon. Jay's almost looking at him like, what the fuck? It's like, he knows his uncle is weird, but it's an apt metaphor that is like, right, if the Codys don't adapt and kind of change up the way they're going, because they've been going, the way they're handling things is how they've handled things for so long. I mean, this is how they've handled things with Smurf back when they were all younger and Smurf was working. This has been a system that's been a part of the Codys' lives for most of their lives. So it's like, yeah, Jay's coming in trying to, but that's also the thing of like, well, Jay's always thinks he's smarter than he thinks he is, and that might end up being his undoing, especially because Pope was like, yo, you still messing around with that married chick? And he's like, yeah. Does she know the dirt about you? And he was like, no, I don't tell anyone about that. And Pope's like, good. And he brings up the Amy thing. He's like, yeah, this lady from church, I've been thinking about calling her. And he's like, yeah. He's like, yeah, I think you should. And so he does kind of call her later on, but he ends up leaving a voicemail. So we'll see what kind of goes forward from there. What I thought was an interesting interaction was between Arthur and Jay. Jay was like, yo, here's your cut. Sorry we couldn't get the piece. We didn't get one of the pieces, but you can check the weight. And Arthur's like, lose my number. And Jay's almost like, wait, what? He's like, yeah, I thought this would feel good, but it doesn't. And he kind of leaves, which I'm immediately like, that's a big fucking problem. Jay's just kind of laughing it off, being like, huh. I was like, I guess some people just aren't cut out for this, but we are. But I'm like, Arthur's a big fucking problem. He might grow his conscience might start eating away at him, and the guilt might be too much. He might end up confessing to his brother. So that's something you might need to nip in the bud. Jay would, because like the whole thing was like, oh, what if Arthur turns on? It's like, no, he wouldn't. That was more so Darren's thing, but also Jay was kind of sure about it too. It's like, it's interesting because, like, yeah, Arthur did all this because he was, like, pissed at his brother. So the fact is that Arthur's having he's second guessing the whole thing. Makes you wonder, what does that mean in parallel and in conjunction with the whole Darren and Craig thing, because there's a very similar, like, dynamic between those two brothers. Once again, they made such a point to connect the stories when Darren was like, wait, you really think a brother would betray another brother? And Jay was like, yeah. Like, Darren was so shocked by that, because I guess it never crossed his mind to think, like, oh, like one of my brothers would ever betray me. Yeah, we get pissed at each other. Yeah, we punch at each other. We talk shit. But we never betray one another, you know? So it's going to be interesting to see if that ends up being an issue. But like I said, like, why Jay's smiling like that? Almost, like I said, I don't know if it's oh, man, some people just aren't cut out for this. It's like, oh, like, haha, he kind of feels bad now. But also, it's just like, once again, I guess, Jay just kind of being like, oh, I guess I'm so smart, blah, blah, blah. I don't know. Because the life's, I guess, good. It's like, right, this job went off without a hitch, trying to legitimize money, everything between him and Penny, having an affair with a married woman. Yeah, we'll see. It's all going to blow up in Jay's face, because that's always happens to the Brady guys, the ones who think they know shit, they've got everything locked down. That hubris will be your undoing, so. I do love that when Pope came back and he was using the microwave to heat up the Chinese food for Darren, he was almost like, was there a blackout? He looked at the cameras and stuff, and he's almost just kind of like, oh, I'm just being crazy. But I'm like, yeah, I think Pope's like the sharpest one. Like, I think that paranoia is there, being like, something feels wrong. It's because Taylor gave Thompson the codes and stuff she needed to get in. She turned the power off. I was about to say, like, I guess, like, the cameras, you would think the cameras would have caught her going up to the gate, but maybe just like, because it's like she immediately went to turn the power off, but I guess they wouldn't have any reason to check the security footage, or maybe the security footage got wiped because all the power was cut off, so like none of that footage was saved. I don't know. They have no reason to look, because the moment the cereal box, like, because I think she turned it backwards, and I was like, that seemed like, I was like, well, Pope is neurotic enough that he might notice that. I wasn't for sure, but it didn't seem like it. So, and she was going through some of Pope's stuff, like pictures of Lena and Catherine, and some like letters and stuff. So I'm like, that's interesting. So we'll see. I thought it was interesting too that Taylor was like, yo, you didn't tell me whose house I was at. It's like, whoa, who do you think they are? He's like, some people you don't mess with. I guess like a lot of people probably know the Cody name. They probably just don't know the individual brothers and what they look like. They're just probably aware of the reputation. So going to the house, probably like seeing the location of it, being like, and knowing like, wait, the Codys have a house. Like, holy shit. Because he probably doesn't even know, like, he's got to know, like, because I don't know if Pope introduced himself as Pope. I think he introduced himself as Andrew. Because I think anytime anyone said their names around, well, because like, who knows how much Detective Thompson told him. She probably just said like, oh, I need you to investigate this. It turns out he's one of her snitches. So I was like wondering like why he was so like about, but it's like, okay. I was leaning towards like potentially a snitch situation, but I thought like why this guy specifically, and it turns out that's why. It's not just a Cody thing he has to worry about. Being a snitch in general is going to be an issue, especially because he's dealing with some very, very dangerous people like the Codys. So once again, showing you how far off she's willing to go. We can kind of see why she's gotten in trouble and ended up in the situation she's in right now. Because, yeah, that's super illegal doing what you're doing. Like, you're just that adamant about cracking a case that you're willing to cross whatever line. Because, but I'm like, all this evidence is poisoned if anyone ever finds out what you did to get it. It's like, it's going to be moot point. Then any good lawyer could end up getting a lot of this, like, tossed out. Because I was wondering, I was like, well, they probably took any plans with them, or at least they have them stashed away. Cause I think they probably make sure not to leave that line about even at the house. So I was wondering if she was going to find something like that, but even if she did, she wouldn't have been able to stop the job while it was underway. Or part of me was wondering whether she could interfere or not, but they probably took the plans with them, or the moment they're finished planning everything else, they probably like destroy it, maybe before doing the job or maybe after the job, or just once again just ended up taking them with them. Either way. So there's all of that present day. And then in the past, we had the whole situation with Baz and Julia, which was kind of interesting. Like Smurf being like, right, if you're going to be on the road, don't get distracted, keep an eye on the road and stuff. And Julia's like, yeah, sure. Thanks for the advice, Smurf. So it's like, right. Not even mom, Smurf. So once again, that's such an antagonistic relationship those two have. It's so flippant, because it's like they could be cool one moment and then like Julia hates her guts and next, and then other times she's just like, yeah, I'm cool with mom, but I still think she's a bitch. Like it's that range. It's always, I think Smurf kind of brings that upon herself, but Baz and Julia kind of do their thing when Baz is supposed to be showing up to help Smurf with a job. Because Smurf is trying to get Billy to help her with something, but Billy's reluctant to do it because he doesn't want to ruin, like, his, Camp Pimpleton or something like that. And it's like, yeah, like, he enjoys the surfing spot and he doesn't want to kind of threaten all of that. But for Smurf, it's like, yo, you try to run off with Darren, took my son to Nevada. You don't even care about being a father. But you, Billy, you don't say no to me. So you're like, yikes. And it's like, yeah, probably no more hanky-panky for you in the nearby future, because you gotta probably screw the pooch on that. I love him being like, that was pretty alright. She's like, I was great. He's like, no, I'm talking about myself. He's like, yeah, like, being a van, it kind of restricts you, but now kind of not being a van. She's like, okay, next time I order a shittier motel. So, but yeah, Baz didn't, like, come through in the end, because he was, him and Julia were doing their thing, and I'm like, I feel like that's gonna rub Smurf probably the wrong way. It's weird. Like, I say it all the time, probably to the point people are annoyed by it, but it's like, that lady has such a complicated and weird relationship with her children, specifically her sons. Like, I don't know, especially because like I legitimately sometimes looking like, is Smurf gonna try to fuck Baz? Like, it legitimately kind of, I have those vibes. I mean, like, Baz is like a horny teenager, so I'm like, him probably looking at like, probably like a combination of so many mommy issues allocated to dad. Like, the way I guess he looks at like, Smurf as like a older, like, buddy rather than like a mom sometimes. Maybe. I don't know, but like the fact is, he's like, yeah, whatever you need me to do, Smurf. But he kind of fell through, and I think he tried to make. I think that's why he changed his sheets, probably because like I think it, the way Julie was acting, it was probably her first time. Probably bled on the sheets, and like I thought she would have noticed that. She noticed him changing the sheets, but she probably picked it up a little because she notices like the looks and the time that Julia and Baz spend together. So. But then at the end, like, Julia made her a drink, be like, oh, I figured you were going to need this. I don't know whether that's her trying to be, like, coy and subtle, making, like, a red drink for her mom, almost being like, it felt like she was trying to make a statement and just being like, oh, you look like you could need one. It's like, oh, your night was shitty, but mine was pretty damn good. So it almost felt like she was rubbing in her mom's face to some extent, but I don't know. We'll see how that kind of plays out because, to some extent, Baz is kind of in the shit house now, so who knows how that's going to affect things going forward with Julia. He might kind of pump the brakes on that, because it might be that thing of, yeah, we did it, and let's not get too attached. We were having fun, that's all it was. Maybe Julia might not appreciate that, but maybe for Baz, it might be his way of being like, no, I got to lock down, I got to do this stuff for Smurf, because if I don't, she's going to cut me out of any future jobs when the big jobs come through and stuff, so... We'll see how that ultimately ends up playing out, but I am so fascinated to see where the next episode ends up taking us with all of this. Obviously, we're burning through the season super fast just because, like, what was it, for 2 weeks, there was, like, back-to-back episodes, so... We're at least at, like, the halfway point, aren't we? Pretty much, so... It's definitely going to be interesting to see how this all plays out, whether there's going to be any aftermath to this job or not. Just that Arthur thing just seems like such a issue, and I don't know, the timing and just like everything with Thompson's like investigation and Taylor and now Amy and just the Penny situation. It's just like there are just too many variables that could come fuck the like Cody's over, and I think that's the point, to be setting up all these things to kind of hit them at once. But I'm also curious to kind of see where everything goes past wise, like what as I talked about, I'm curious what the matching point is, because I brought it up last season that just as they kind of reunited and fully are kind of like moving on without Smurf, like they are kind of in, despite the fisticuffs and everything, they're in a good place. And then like in the past, we saw Smurf moving into the house that would eventually become the foundation of everything, right? So the true start of her kingdom and them kind of rebooting it to some extent in the season 5 finale. So that's why I'm like, where will this series, what will the series finale end up? Like, will it end up with like Julia giving birth to Jay and maybe at the same time he's dying? Like, how's that going to line up? What job is going to have, like, because there's still like so much of that life to kind of cover, because like obviously it's like Darren and Craig are still kids, but you know, Andrew and Julia have always been kind of like the main focus. They were the main focus last season, and now you're throwing in Baz just because they are the older siblings. So it's going to be interesting to see where all this takes us going forward, and just like how the past and the present continue to line up in what shape or form, you know? But really, that's all I'm going to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.